Hey, welcome to Watch This with Dennis, and we're doing another Saturday live stream, as I am fairly consistently finally doing. My name is Dennis, of course, and today we're actually going to be talking about Jaeger-LeCoultre, or JLC, as almost all of us refer to it, because no one ever pronounces the full name right, including myself. But regardless of that, just in terms of some introductory stuff before we get going, did do a live stream earlier in the week on it was a new game where we did kind of a like pick the best value. There have been a lot of channels that do these sort of things where they go and they like experience a cheap, a moderately priced and expensive haircut or a meal at restaurants, like going and finding a cheap and an expensive hot dog, things like that. So we did that with watches and had a panel, a total of four of us. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and go back and check it out and let me know if you think the format works or doesn't work. The up down vote ratio on it is like standard with what I normally have. So I assume it's so far been relatively well received for as few views as it has, which most of my live stuff doesn't get a ton of views. So I'm not too shocked there. But anyway, it's there if you want to see it because it is different than the usual game that we play, which is almost always this or that or tot, as we call it, watch tot. Let's see other things going on. Not a whole lot. This topic about pricing kind of came up in that video that we did, the live stream. We talked about the Le Mans Rolex at the end of that after the game was done. So if you want to hear some thoughts about that, there again, four of us were giving our take on that new Daytona model. I haven't done a standalone video on it. I did do a standalone video regarding some new Seikos. Seiko, well, one actually. They released several, but there's a new Seiko 5 that celebrates the original Seiko 5 Sports, 15,555 limited edition count. So I gave some thoughts regarding that particular watch. They did some non-limited ones as well, but they look very, very different. So I didn't feel comfortable putting them all in the same video because I think it sort of obfuscates the discussion a little bit. A lot of times when they're released as a set, I'll try and do it and point out differences in sizing and stuff. But if it's differences other than like dial and price, I think it just starts to become a bit of a pain. So I decided to avoid that. Good morning, Kevin. Welcome to the live stream. And in terms of today I'm wearing the Stova Type B dial Flieger. Incidentally, I had someone leave a comment. Laco, I don't know when they rolled these out. I assume it's relatively new, but Laco has released a Pro line. I think they call it the Pro line, and you can get them Type A or Type B. And I think it's really interesting because they have finally come up with like what this watch. I'll take it off to give you an example. But why I chose Stova over Laco, and for those that don't know, Stova and Laco were two of the original 5 Flieger manufacturers, and I was kind of interested just from a historical link, since all the names of the brands at least continue on to this day. Obviously, A. Lange and Zona is not the same A. Lange Zona as was in the before times, because all that stuff's technically under GO now. But hey, Jason, welcome to the live stream. And so anyway, the big change is, so this is the Stova, but unlike in the traditional Fliegers, you can see that the lugs curve downward. These hug the wrist a lot better than the straight lugs do. The straight lugs are more traditional. Laco always did the straight lugs. Anyway, they do have a Pro line now, and they've curved the lugs. So if you were interested in Laco has a lot more choice than Stova has a good amount of choice, but Laco has more in terms of customization options for Fliegers. So I would say if you are in the market for a Flieger and you're interested in owning one from one of the original brands in particular, definitely check out Laco, even if you've maybe initially ruled them out because you didn't think the watch would wear very well with the straight lugs, because they've mixed things up a bit. I will go ahead and share in the live chat a link if anyone wants to join in for today's discussion, because I know some people had mentioned being interested in that. But then, at least one who thought they were going to be on probably can't be on because it sounds like they're actually getting a new watch. But we will save that for another discussion. So let's go into JLC. Now, watch prices have been going up in terms of retail pricing for quite a while. I think many of us saw many many of the price spikes started during the pandemic era. I think a lot of us may recall, even when we weren't in the market, when Rolex went ahead and spiked most of their prices up by over 10%. There were a lot of supply chain issues. Inflation had become more prevalent, and we were starting to see that impact on the industry across a whole swath of manufacturers. But some price increases have been going on since then, and not all. It's kind of the George Orwell Animal Farm. Some animals are more equal than others, and some price increases are more sizable than others. And I think one of the most interesting ones that I've been hearing about really throughout what we've endured so far in 2023 is JLC. So I want to go ahead and focus in on them because their price spikes. I'm not going to say that they've gone into full on crazy land, but I'm going to imply it because these prices have gotten pretty extreme in my opinion. Good morning, Tuna. Well, morning for me. Welcome to the live stream. So let me get the screen share going here. Now I have 3 articles linked in the video description, so you can go and read up on these things if you are interested. And I see Jason. Hey.
Hey, what's up?
You've made a stream, or one of my weird ones where I just blab.
Well, I have to make it up to you because I I missed a few of your live streams already. I wanted to be there,
but there's no obligation. These are just for fun. You're a professional YouTuber. I am casual. I'm a plebe.
Well, that's nice to hear, but professional, that's still very far from what we're doing in YouTube so far.
Well, your video quality is professional, so we'll at least let me give you that at the very least.
All right. Thanks.
So JLC is the topic that I went with today. Mm-hmm. That kind of came up in the live stream where we did the earlier in the week where we played the game. And just sort of at the end, price increases came up, and it was like, JLC in particular, I'd seen a few pieces, especially really this month. And so that's one of the things I was sharing here was this is Relozo, one of the sites. This is an Australian site, but given the pricing, it's started to get a little bit extreme, more so than I think we've been seeing from other brands, many of which have done some incremental increases, and we saw some of those spike increases during the pandemic. Yeah. But as you can see,
it's not just them. I mean, like now working at Chivas, they gave me all of this store to update our pricing because a little insider view of the matter is like these brands they send you, of course, ahead of time their price increases. At the beginning of the year, there was a few who already increased their prices, and then there's the June price increase, and that's when they sent us like a couple of months ago. Piaget, Panerai, JLC, those are the price increases. The thing about that is like if we ordered something before the price increase, we still get it at that cost, even though the watches are delivered to us after the June increase. But then when it's, of course, in the store, you have to price it as the June increase. So it's kind of like a good incentive for retailers and dealers to just buy them early. And then there's some brands that are, these increases are like not really that much of a big of a jump, if you ask me, but they're still increased. There's still an increase, and like we feel it at the retail end. If like I'm a buyer, I see, okay, it kind of is a big jump,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's and some of the big brands or some of the more exclusive brands, like I know Vacheron has done some pretty significant price increases, for example. So it is across the spectrum where we're seeing action. And given inflation has slowed, it's still obviously we are feeling the effects from when it's not like we've deflated. So there's still this sort of residual increase as well that I know we're living with.
Yeah, and I think it's also part of the manufacturing process also because almost all of the materials increased in price. We have to take into account what's happening, in Ukraine and Russia, and then China also, who's manufacturing many of these watch parts. I know that we're talking about Swiss brands, but not all of their materials are from Switzerland. I mean, it's not
Right.
feasible.
Now, some of these, in terms of, and again, a couple of the other items I've linked for people if they want to read. This one's actually one can listen to. There's a discussion here, and I went back and actually played this during the week, so I would be familiar with it. But as a case in point, though, some of these price increases are not. I don't think they're aligning just with material increases. I think that's a good cloak for them to wear because there is an increase that's part that they're padding in on that, but as was noted, and this was back in February, and there's been another price increase since then. JLC raised their Duo face 44%. That's pretty significant for a steel watch.
Yeah.
And the cost of the materials isn't going to account for a 44% spike on something that already had a pretty high delta for profit. I also linked, there's a Hodinkee article not focused on JLC. I did link it, though, because there are some relevant comments where some people were giving some of their examples. This highlighted section was probably the most interesting one, where someone said they bought a small JLC Reverso in 2020 from the AD at about $6,500. They're now officially $10,300. It's the exact same movement. It's the exact same dial. It's the exact same watch. So I thought, well, let me do some examples myself. So I went and I this morning went to JLC's site and I pulled up a few examples. And one of the interesting things is, and again, this isn't unusual. The price increases vary by watch. It's not all a flat across the board thing. And we see that with Rolex all the time. Like every year, you might see they raise their steel percentages higher than they do their precious metal, which I don't think is particularly surprising given the demand is more for the steel watches. But so this moon phase Master Ultra Thin's current MSRP is $11,900. Same site, way back machined from July 7th of last year. So just under a year ago was $10,700. So you can see this one's gone up by $1,200 in the meantime. I also pulled the Polaris, a watch they wished was popular. $10,500 is the current price point on that. Going back to, again, almost a year ago, $8,200 is probably the most extreme, I think, example I've got, because this one is up over $2,000. And then I pulled a monoface Reverso, which is currently $10,600. The red one they always like to advertise. And then going back to May, so this is a little over a year ago, $8,750. So just under $2,000. So the thought is, in terms of the discussion that I was going to have with the stream, and now I have someone I can actually talk to. What do you think beyond the supply side? Because yes, there are these supply chain issues, and the Hodinkee article from February focuses a lot on how there are still a number of parts that watchmakers are really struggling to get. But that's not justifying this level of increase. So what else do you think's in play?
Well, I think there's also the brand positioning. We have to remember they had that, was it a year ago? They produced this super complicated Reverso that's they say this is the epitome of what we could do as a brand. And I think they were trying to position that as, okay, this is our flagship, this is our leading product. Now everybody knows that. Everybody understood, okay, JLC, even the crowds that are not usually into watches, they actually heard about that, and this is like an insane watch. And also TikTok and Reels and all these short videos were talking about it. So I guess they were trying to, that's what I think, at the very least, they're trying to position themselves as another player that's supposedly popular outside of the watch communities and the watch groups, and now they're taking advantage of that to increase their prices, because there's now even more interest on them. And the thing is, like, yeah, we talk about these price increases, they to us, looking from the outside, they are really big jumps. But then from the insides where the tradings are happening, they continue to be normal. People are still like asking for these specific models, even if they were higher in price. And these are not resellers. These are, we call them end clients that actually are looking for them. So to them, I guess the prices are not an issue. To them, what matters to them is the exclusivity, and that also could play into it as well. If JLC is raising their prices, because we've seen this with Seiko also, they raised their prices, and now Citizen is trying to jump in to the market they left, right? Because
Yeah.
Citizen is trying to, capture that below prospects line pricing. This I think is what JLC is also trying to do. They're trying to raise their brand cachet through first making the most complicated reversal ever, and then now raising all of their prices to tell people, hey guys, if you really want a JLC like that, if you want a piece of history like that, reversal that we just released a year ago, then this is what you have to pay, and you can't get a JLC anymore at this lower end of the market. And I guess that's what they're trying to do. And I mean, to me, I still see that it's still feasible for them. Actually, I wanted to trade in my Submariner if it weren't my my son saying like, no, don't do it for a JLC. But okay, so I still I still JLC still holds a big spot in my heart, and I
Mhm.
want to own a JLC at some point, and because I see the qualities there, but maybe not to people now that it's the prices are increasing. Maybe it's not so viable anymore. I guess that's how
Right.
they thin the herd.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I gotta say, I'm pretty glad I did not get rid of my Reverso was my one dress watch I kept when I kind of liquidated a big chunk of my collection to get the Longa, and now I'm thinking, well, I'm glad I held on to it because I don't know if I'd want to buy one at these new. Now, of course,
Yeah.
the used pricing is lagging more than it used to, and I see Patrick with Pocket Watch Time is willing to join in. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning,
morning.
people. You all are like me. I after 3 p.m. my time, I actually turn to garbage. So I know all the late live streams. That's why I'm so bad at them. Um, so yeah, I agree with a lot with what you've said, Jason. I do think it's a lot of its positioning. I think not just an attempt necessarily, though, in my view, to raise brand prestige. I think some of it is also a keeping up with the Joneses thing. Like they see Omega's raising their prices, and they're like, our market position isn't any different versus Omega than it was before. So Omega's $1,300 more on a watch. We need to raise our prices too, or else we're going to look like we're Breitling or something, that
Yeah.
sort of, or that might. So I think that's kind of
Yeah,
that
I
too.
agree.
Like it makes like they don't want to be seen as less than what they were before. So if IWC and Omega are raising prices, I kind of think their leadership at Richemont's like, you got to raise prices too. If Omega's doing it, you got to do it. Patrick, do you have a take on what's going on?
Well, I mean, my first take is JLC popular enough to do this? Because I've made fun of JLC for years. I respect them as a brand because I know they make great watches, but I think their lineup is insanely boring, and they're the case in the store. When I see JLC, I just walk past because JLC and IWC, I know I'm going to look over and I'm not going to see anything that's going to be interesting. And, and that's to me a shame. So if you're kind of the low hanging fruit in the store, do you have the right to raise your prices like that? I just don't know if it's going to hurt them long run because, I wasn't going to buy them at their old prices. I'm definitely not going to buy them at their new prices, unless of course they make something really cool, which they haven't done in decades.
Yeah, and yeah, the future on it is perplexing to me. I'll go ahead and read this comment from Koji who listed JLC does a crazy flex like the Hybris 185 just to show everyone what they can do. Then the Duo Face used to be great bang for the buck, but maybe now they're trying to cash in on the one iconic model. And that's sort of the thing I wanted to ask about. That the link I have in the description to the Fratello podcast where they talk about the pricing, they bring that up and the whole thing of, well, is JLC must recognize that they're really only the Reverso brand to most people. Everyone walks by, unless you're into the Reverso, you walk by the case, like Patrick's just described. Is this price increase thing feasible when you're a one brand company? And on their podcast, the discussion then, of course, shifted to, well, AP's just the Royal Oak, and then that it's like, well, they released the code, right, to try and be different. It's like, well, yeah, but that's what JLC tried to do with the Polaris. Doesn't mean it worked. I don't know. I don't know if they're in
No, I don't think it worked either. I mean, like the Polaris still remained in the same position as it was, even though they marketed it like heavily a number of months ago. But I think it's also, I mean, look, if we're the people that's like looking at prices and it's turning us off. I mean, I'm included in that. Then maybe that's not the market that JLC is trying to cater to. I mean, I do agree that there is a moot point. Why are you like the comparisons that you showed, like the same model, and then there's like an increase of $1,000, $2,000 between them. It's the very same model, right? So these, I think, are the ones that are, let's say, carry over of what JLC is doing as a brand, because outside of these watches that remain the same, they're also producing some crazy limited editions, and those are the ones that the JLC fans are looking after. And to be honest, like what Patrick was saying earlier, when you pass by their displays, I just like pass them by because I already know what JLC is, and then if I'm curious enough to look at the prices, then it's going to turn me away. But I guess that's not who JLC is marketing for. They already are. They're marketing for those who know JLC, because even my boy said, "What I know what the JLC is, but it's not it's not in with the crowd. It's not in with the with the youngsters.
It's not hype.
Yeah, it's not. There you go. It's not hype. And even he knows what an AP is. He knows what a Royal Oak is, and he knows what a Submariner is. But a Master Control, what is that? I mean, I know that. I know it's super nice and it's well finished and it's super complicated, but nobody knows what that watch is. So there you go.
Yeah.
We're not the demographic that they're catering to.
Yeah, it's like Omega makes the Meta certification, and that's great, but you're not going to sell a watch because of the Meta certification.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Master Control. It's a great system, but if you don't put it in a watch that has a spark and has some energy, as I said, it blows right over me. So
I've wondered as well. I brought up earlier the issue with trying to stay positioned with the pricing of what they see as their peers and not wanting to seem like a cheaper brand as maybe being one motivator. What about though, and we've all seen this before, but the Morgan Stanley report, where their market share in terms of the dollars that they make up of the Swiss sales pie has been falling. And is maybe some of this a strategy to try and address this? So we go back to 2017, JLC is 10th in terms of total value sales, or estimated at least, according to the Morgan Stanley report. And then the latest report, which went through 2022, has them slipped all the way down to 14th at this stage. And is this maybe a move? I'll make it YouTube. We'll make it dramatic. Wait, is this a desperation move on the part of JLC where they're like, we are losing market share and we got to do something about it? What's the strategy? What worked with Quartz? Oh, well, we just got to raise our prices more so we can make more money selling less watches, because what else are we supposed to do? We're in this topsy-turvy world where Cartier has displaced Omega and Omega's raising their prices. Maybe it's the right strategy because the Breitlings and IWCs are climbing this chart at our expense.
Yeah, I mean, my first impression when I see that chart is I'm shocked that JLC beat Tudor. So that... that tells me they're selling more watches than I thought they were selling, because I know they're a popular brand, and I know I come with a bias of I'm not really a big dress watch fan, so their big model, the Reverso, means absolutely nothing to me. So I know I'm an outsider looking in on JLC, but I'm still just surprised that they're even doing that well. So I know they're falling. You can see the trend, but they're holding their own. I'm not mad at them.
Well, Tudor's always been a weird one to me because it's like in our like in the watch discussion bubble, Tudor's like Tudor has this displaced discussion versus whenever I see these sales charts. I always am fascinated when you go back to 2017 and Tudor's not even in the top 20 because we always talk about, well, as of 2012, right? Tudor's back. Tudor's been back. And I mean, clearly their strategy's working, but they're such a small piece still. Obviously compared to Rolex, but everything's pretty small compared to Rolex.
But this is not volume, is it not? This is revenue.
No, this is revenue. This is dollars, and that's where again JLC could be. This is my theory. That as part of their strategy, they could be saying it doesn't matter how many watches we sell. If we raise our price 44% on our most popular duo face models, we can reverse this. We don't have to sell more watches. We just need to sell.
Well, that's what we've been talking about, the dual face and the reversals. But actually, if you look at this, I mean, like, if you look at what JLC offers compared to what Tudor's offering, they have these crazy high complication items that could move well. I mean, like if they make like 100 of those, or let's say just say if they make 10 of those, and those 10 get sold off like really quickly, let's say for a month, and that's equivalent to say 50 Tudors. I mean, then there you go. They don't have to work so hard. They don't have to work or produce so much compared to Tudor. If they're moving like these crazy pieces, these crazy expensive and complicated pieces at a minimum amount of volume compared to a massive amount of volume for Tudor. That you saw Adrian Barker's video, maybe, when he went into Tudor and he explored how they manufacture stuff. They have the Kinesi building right beside them. I mean, Tudor has been doing all of their best in the R&D department in the past few years just to lower or offer watches that are better value or better better pricing compared to its competitors. But that's at the sacrifice of their equity, because they had to like make a whole new different manufacturing building on the side and if Tudor didn't have to do that, if JLC didn't have to do that and still get the same amount of revenue, then I would go for that. And the thing is, like, we see the dual face, we see the reversals, the popular ones, but we don't see those crazy pieces that get moved constantly behind the scenes. The ones that are not being displayed on the displays, the ones that special customers had to call the ADs, hey, I want this particular model. And now I see that all the time. We have this chat group. They say they're looking for this specific piece. Oh, they couldn't find it. We'll source it. They have to go through 3 different people just to source it to that client. And if that client is happy to buy that, it's worth more than selling 5 Rolexes. And that could account for the revenues. But you go back to that chart. Even that chart, you saw Tudor climbing up. So actually, Tudor's, as JLC's trajectory is going down, Tudor was going up. You see there in 2020, I guess that's where they blew up with the amount of volume that they were able to move during that jump. That's what took them higher to the charts. But then to maintain that is a different situation altogether. So they had to maintain now that kind of production and that kind of sales. But with JLC, we don't hear them devoting money to their R&D. We never hear anything about that. So I guess they're still just operating the same, way that they're operating for the past few years. And that's why the Hublot overtook them. Tag Heuer's is like also going down. Breitling overtook them during that jump.
Breitling's been making so many good moves under their new leadership, though. that.
And Breitling is
I'm
Breitling
less
is easier
surprised.
to spot because their marketing was like more widespread. You know, it spread outside of the enthusiast communities.
Mhm.
That's what I think. And even Bacheron, that's a surprise to me. Bacheron was able to climb up a few spots from 2020.
Yeah,
That
I
I don't
mean
know.
it's an interesting chart because I mean even the IWC, I never would have thought that they were that high, and look at them, they're completely steady. I mean they're 8 and
Yeah.
9, that whole area, and it's just like that's that's impressive to me because as a brand, I mean I know they're a good brand, but I just didn't think they were that strong, and I
Mhm.
guess they are.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was surprised as well when I saw IWC. I had always had the impression, apparently falsely, that they had been sliding. But they weren't as mainstream as they once were, and I don't know enough about their details to know why they're holding. I have my theories on some of the others. So my theory on Vacheron is when you see this particular spec, because they were 12th, drop a little bit, be about the 14th, and then they all of a sudden skyrocket back up to getting into this 10th and 9th spot. I think that's the overseas when people couldn't get the
Mhm.
Nautilus and the pandemic speculation. People just started buying overseas because it was the one
It's
integrated
possible.
Holy Trinity watch you could still get until
Yeah.
you couldn't. And now you can get them again. So I'm wondering if they're going to fall on this list after when 2023 comes out. I bet you they fall.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the gray market shows because I'm addicted to the internet and I watch all of them.
Yes.
But they definitely have been pushing the overseas, and it works. I mean, as I said, they pushed GP for a good year, and we saw how high those prices went. So they
Now,
can actually do it pretty easily for a good brand like VC.
Now I might be wrong though, because as Jason pointed out, if you've got like high dollar specialty pieces though that you can move, I've wondered if I think Vacheron's smart. I think like reintroducing the 222, for example, that might help.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to sell a lot of them at that price point to keep a big market share, because this is all about incoming revenue. It's not net. It's not factoring in the expenses or anything. With Tudor, I'm less sure, but my guess is around 2020 when we saw them jump up kind of from 18th to 15th. Is that when they finally started retiring a lot of the Etta Salida movements and their in-house stuff? Because they raised the price points with the in-house stuff. And we've just seen them retire some more out here in 2023. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Tudor climb up out of 15th when 2023 rolls out, because they finally basically dropped all the smiley face stuff here with Watches and Wonders and are at the stage of practically everything. Like what's not in-house anymore with them, the 1926. I don't know what else is still using EBOSH movements.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the thing is, like, it's not just the dollars that Tudor's offering. It's also, I guess, it's some style points or feature points. There you go, feature points compared to others in the same price category. I think that's what they're aiming at. But I think also it's like it's an investment, because now that they're able to do that and they're able to offer that kind of movement also outside of their own Tudor brand, because the Kanisi movements, they offer it to other people. It's not just and that's still money that you don't see there in that chart because it's not on Tudor. Yes, I guess they're trying to do like the Asian way of doing things, like the Seiko way of manufacture. So it's a double purpose strategy, and maybe most of those brands are not paying attention to that chart that we just saw. They likely don't care. They just want to ensure that these brands, as a company, you always want what 5% increase like every year, regardless of the market situation, the market atmosphere. So I mean, like, if Tudor's like investing in that, then they're investing on the future more than anything else.
Let me give you a theory to you two, and let me know what you think of it. So JLC, watchmaker's watchmaker, you heard it forever. more known for their movements historically, and then over time became known for making watches. But unlike with Tudor, their movement stuff is in-house to them, like from the get-go. Like they make it under their name brand. Given all the shifts ever since really Swatch Group throttled the supply of the ETA movements, and then all these companies started making in-house movements, and then it became a thing with collectors to almost demand, if you want like more than $3,000 for a watch, it better have an in-house movement. Long story short, do you think JLC is in part suffering on this chart because they aren't able to sell as many movements to companies because everyone, even the highest end companies, the Holy Trinity companies, don't want to use JLC movements anymore because everyone is just demanding with basically no cause that you have to do in-house or you're not a real watchmaker anymore. So like they don't sell them all to Patek and VC and AP like they used to. Everyone's in-house. So all JLC sells JLC movements to is JLC. Because no one worth their stripes is going to say, I don't do in-house movements anymore.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because particularly since I'm only assuming that their movements aren't as cheap as, you know, a Kinesi or stuff like that. So they're not going to sell their movements to a, you know, an upstart brand. You know, their movements probably have to be into a watch that's at least in the, you know, 5,000 to 10,000 range. And there aren't very many, as you said, watches in that range that aren't striving for in-house themselves to stay in this market. And, you know, that definitely could hurt them because one of my favorite watches that, you know, it's a grail of mine is a Tantalum Royal Oak, but it's old enough that that version actually has a JLC movement in it. And for me, that's actually an improvement because I think JLC makes better movements than Vacheron. And as I said, that's the one that I would want, but right now it's a little cost prohibitory.
Yeah, I want to approach it also as a personal, in a personal standpoint, me as a buyer. Because my collection or like my taste in watches ranges very, very, very wide, you know. For that range that I want, like what Patrick is also saying, like that sub $5,000, sub $10,000 category, I want like an in-house movement, right? It's unheard of if you buy a watch that doesn't have an in-house movement at over 5K. So then Tudor is catering to that kind of person, that kind of buyer that matters to them. So in a way, the buyer for that kind of price category is buying the watch and then the movement next, right? But if you're that kind of buyer that has experience already, that has more clout and more money to play around with, you'd go with the complication first. And now, if like what you said, JLC doesn't give these complications anymore to other brands, then where are you going to get this kind of complication now? You only have one place, which is JLC. Of course, the secondary market value would be like, you know, something that's to be left to be desired, because if you say, for example, buy one of these 17,000 chronographs from JLC, for sure you can't sell that for 15,000 anymore. I mean, like off the AD, it's going to you're going to take a massive amount to resell it. But those kind of people who buy that, they don't tend to resell it anyway. You know, they tend to like hold on to them. And those people who like the movement first, then the watch next, those are totally two different people that we're talking about here. So I think that they shouldn't be affected by Tudor offering all of these in-house movements that they have. But now, I mean, if you wanted a JLC movement, you just have to go to JLC, and you can't see it anymore in AP. You can't see it anymore in Vacheron, because all of them are like manufacturing their own, at least for the higher end models.
Right. And I agree with you,
Jason. That they're going to be affected at all.
I don't think they're affected by Tudor and Tudor's in-house, because Tudor was never buying JLC movements anyway.
Correct.
It was more of a question of could their part of their fall in terms of the amount of revenue they're generating be they just sell less movements now to the upper echelon because very few companies outside of really high end could buy JLC movements?
No, I think it's just that the other brands started to market to younger audiences. That's what I think. Because like JLC still markets to the older folk. Like I stepped up that older folk barrier like a couple of years ago. So, and I guess okay.
They
So when
have
you're getting
this.
older, you get a JLC. Yeah,
I mean, but Dennis,
come on.
you're right. Even that one, which is, as I said, their younger crowd, it just, and it's my favorite watch. It's my favorite JLC is the Polaris. And the green one on like the green rubber, that would almost be something I could pull the trigger on because the rubber at least makes it look younger. But actually, I think, Jason, you nailed it with what you just said. Their watches are aimed towards a older crowd. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you don't have something that sucks in the young crowd, you're definitely losing market share.
Yeah, I mean,
because
go
there's
back to
old
the
and
chart.
young people who buy watches.
Yeah, if you go back to the chart, look at IWC, you look at 2022 and 2021. Look what overtook JLC there. Tag Heuer, Hublot, Tissot, Breitling, IWC. Even Longines is still there because like Longines is big in Asia. And they also cater to an older crowd too, Longines. But nevertheless, their more popular models right now are the divers, which is like very cool with the young crowd, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And look at IWC. Yeah, we were talking about IWC. I think Patrick was surprised about that, but IWC has been making some really popular themes that's in with the younger crowds lately. With the Type 20, that Type 20 was really nice, and that little change of making that case more compact and more appealing to the younger crowd made them move those models like really quickly. And Breitling, look at Breitling with the Premier line, with their collaborations with racing and vintage styling. That's also into the crowd, younger crowd right now. Because Tissot, for example, there was like they released a recent revival that really funky yellow and orange and green models. Those I can't remember the names.
I forget the name, but yeah, they're very young. They're very youthful.
Yeah, and look at that. The Tissot and then the PRX. That's what rocketed them to the charts because they're catering to the younger crowd. At some point, JLC has to do that because I'm yet to see a JLC model that caters to that demographic. Because all we know about JLC is the reverso. Master controls are like for the connoisseurs and all that, and there are other complicated watches. I guess like what Patrick said, the Polaris, they were trying to position that to the younger crowd, but I guess that didn't go well. Even Panerai, I'm reviewing a Panerai with smaller cases now, and that's specifically aimed for younger people. They specifically mentioned that in their site as well. So you have to cater to the younger folk at some point because we old folk will die off anyway. So you have to continue the brand.
That's true. So I want to ask then, do you think that it can be separate from this chart, obviously. This is just one theory of many about why maybe JLC is doing some of what they're doing, but do you think that them raising prices just like on there more popular to old people, because that's the only popular watches they've got are the ones that older people want, is an effective strategy? And I bring it up because, for example, we know earlier this year, what was the most hotly debated thing out of Watches and Wonders? I would say was the price point for the new Jaeger from IWC. But at least they could hide behind or cite or however you want to, whatever, if you want to make it pejorative or not, they were able to at least say, well, there's new stuff in this. We did new stuff on the Jaeger. JLC isn't doing that. They're saying this exact same Polaris is $2,000 more now for reasons. And the reasons are we just chose to make it higher. So will people, because if most people who are into JLC right now are people who are already into JLC, are they going to be cool with that and say, you know what, I'm done. I was scrimping and saving to buy a Polaris, and you just spiked it $2,000 in a year. No, I'm not. I'm gonna buy a Tudor now instead.
I would say you're right on both counts. So, I mean, when the IWC thing, I loved that. That was so much fun when that came out. Everyone was so angry and
the internet rage. Their little fists were up.
And I tried to jump on the rage because I mean, I love when people get angry about hobby. I mean, as I said, I'm a very non-insulted person, and I take it for what it is. Like, this is watches. I enjoy watches. I enjoy pocket watches, and I spend way too much money on them. But I came out with a video. I think it was called like Too Expensive, and it wasn't that one. It was all of them. I mean, like, anyone who says that any of your watches are worth the price they're worth, you're crazy. I mean, even a Rolex isn't worth 10 grand. There's $500 of kit in that watch. The rest of it is all padding. And kind of going to the JLC is, the people I think who are going to buy the Reverso like the Reverso, just like the people who want a sub. And Rolex knows, hey, I can up it 3%, 10% every year. And guess what? People are going to still keep buying it. And probably the people who want a Reverso will probably still buy it if they bring it up $2 grand. So I don't think they're going to hurt themselves on their already their customers. But I do feel like they're going to hurt themselves on the people, as you said, we're aspiring to. Because Pete McConville, he bought the one that I like. He bought the green Polaris on rubber, I believe. And he made a post somewhere on some chat group I'm on, and he said, thank God I bought it 2 years ago, because he bought it for like 8 grand Australian, and now it's like 14 grand Australian, but Australia's got crazy prices. But I mean, it almost doubled, and he wouldn't have bought it if it was current times. And so I think JLC is going to lose those people, but they might make the same money because they're still going to get the people they've got their hooks in.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I'm not really worried about the brand now, seeing how much these watches actually cost, because that's actually my job. And I'm really surprised at how much less they actually cost, these watches. I'm not just talking about JLC, but like these watches in general. And to me, I'm not really worried about these brands. I think they're much more worried about their brand image rather than their actual prices. JLC, for example, I think they're trying to do the same image model as Rolex. They don't want to change so much. Unlike with Omega, they want to like offer as much as like the opposite of the spectrum. So I guess those are the two different approaches that these brands are doing. AP is a little bit of an anomaly because with their more popular brands, their popular watches, they're trying not to change so much of them, like the Royal Oaks. But then they want on the other side offer as much craziness in design as possible. So they're trying to, and like both approaches, they cater to the younger crowd. So AP is the anomaly, but for the others, like Patek, you don't see Patek like offering crazy designs and crazy models. When's the last time did the Patek release a new model line? I can't even remember. At least AP was able to release the code stuff,
Now, but Patek did I can't remember the last time they released a new model line. Didn't they though? I'm gonna throw them up here real quick because I thought they came out with some new Calatrava colors that seem to be trying to be more youthful. As much as a Calatrava can be. With your Great Depression aesthetic. These ones, I know they're very polarizing.
Oh God. Oh, I hate those.
They're polarizing.
Patrick,
I don't know how
this would take 10 years off your look though.
Oh, I mean, I think JJ's group was talking about this watch, and I mean, this is just the biggest hodgepodge of just they got it wrong. I mean, as a design, I mean, It's a gold watch with some fake carbon fiber looking thing and some like cheap plastic looking strap. I mean, that thing is a piece of garbage. I mean,
looks like a micro brand if you ask me.
Yeah, I can't shine up that turd anymore. That thing is so bad.
You know, I try and help. And this is
but if you pulled up that purple one, then I'd be like, okay.
I mean, like, look, it's still a Calatrava, different dial. I mean, like a completely new collection. Like at least AP's trying with the code. What's it again? Code 11, code 1, whatever. I mean, like that code line.
Like 1159 or something.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Which those were pretty hated when they came out too, because they looked like fashion watches.
Yeah, I remember that. I still don't know what to think of them, but I guess they're like gaining traction now. People are, searching for them, or they're looking for them now. So I mean,
they've done some new dials. I think it's like they brought back like the star dial and stuff on some of these. What is with these sites in this introduction?
Yeah.
I remember when HTML was simple and we didn't have to do this sort of stuff.
Yes, exactly. I used to do coding for that, but now it's like these are like super. Anyway, but the websites are like a different story. But at least AP's like trying to do something different. But I guess that's what they were. Yes, the one that's like going out now. That was like his direction. The AP's CEO, and yeah, they have the concept. So I guess that's the good thing about AP, But the other brands are like just.
Yeah, I do think AP, and I don't know how much of it is just them being AP, being.
But that Paul Newman, look at that.
And some of these, when these styles came out and people were like, you got to be kidding. But I get it. I think they recognize that there's some inherent risks when you're only known for the Royal Oak so I think it's partly just being smart about not wanting all your eggs in one basket, because what happens if the basket eventually gets a hole in the bottom? But I think also some of it is maybe a little bit of pride in the fact that they're like, we were this grand complication company right up there with Patek and Vacheron, and all anyone cares about is our integrated steel sports watch, and we need to show that we do actually still know how to do other things. So I sort of think it's a blend in that regard, whereas maybe JLC, I think if you were to ask JLC, they would say, we're trying, we do try, but if the Polaris doesn't catch fire, and then it gets kind of listless, and it's like, what was the last time you heard anyone really talk about anything other than a Reverso? And I would say for a hot minute, when people liked the Master Control that Doctor Strange wore in the Marvel movies, and then they went and found out how much they were, and they're like, oh, I guess that'll be the one I get right after I get the Spider-Man. Yeah. So, it's, I think they know that they've got an issue going on. Clearly, in the Morgan Stanley chart shows that they're losing their slice of the income pie of the Swiss industry is going down. And maybe they don't really like that. But.
Or maybe they're working on something behind closed doors. It's just not ready yet. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the watch stuff, like, I totally could see, like, what you opened with, Jason, if they were to, continue to push out sort of these interesting complication watches, like the reaction to their Reversos and the complications, like the Chronos that came out at Watches and Wonders, were very positive by people. Adding price on the new stuff, I totally understand, because again, as Patrick noted, the cost of the materials is super cheap. Ultimately, even if there are increases, it's like these are luxury goods. They command the prices that they command because of the exclusivity and the fact that you can still get quite an amount out of them on the used market, because that's just what they trade for. So if they were to raise prices on the new stuff, I totally understand. It's these, let's add $2,000. I know we had Meatball in the chat. I love that name because now I'm hungry. Noting in euros the $2,000 increase on the Master Control, and that's not even factoring in the 2023 price increases, of which there have been 2. This is just 2021 to 2022. I mean, when it's the same sort of thing, I just wonder, because again, a lot of ADs will will liquidate these through Joma Shop and gray market where they can. That was one of the interesting things I thought. I think it was Cartier, which of course is pretty high on our Morgan Stanley chart, finally displacing Omega. Wasn't it Cartier that they had a lot of surplus watches at some of their AEDs and they bought them back and destroyed them because they didn't want to cheapen their brand? They're like, you ain't getting this $250 worth of steel. We're going to steamroll this stuff like the ET Atari 2600 cartridges and landfill it.
Yeah, I think that Cartier is really, really smart when it comes to handling their brand image, and I think that was like a big plus for them. I mean, like at the sacrifice of their, if that was really true, I don't know, if they just destroyed a big lot of their watches to increase their brand equity, so be it. I mean, like it's probably deductible too. I don't know how they're going to do that, but it's probably deductible too from their taxes. I don't know. I mean, like if they donated it, it would have been nice, but I don't think that would actually even lessen their brand equity. You know?
I hope they didn't actually steamroll them. Now they could have pulled a Panerai and then just reused them and called them recycled watches and added $40,000 to the price point.
And look where Panerai is right now.
New form of steel.
Yes, Panasteel.
Panasteel. Oh my god!
All right.
That
well, yes. Now I'm extra hungry. Well, that's all I had. You guys have any final thoughts on it? Otherwise, we'll close this out.
No, one question I have, just because I don't know it, and it kind of relates to what you're talking about, the gray market. Do reversos, how much do they lose, or do they stay the same on the gray market? Because I've never looked.
You know what?
They're so boring to me, I don't even check them. But that makes it extra weird to me that if, let's say, a 10 grand reverso only goes for 7 grand on the gray market, would bumping it up to 12, that makes it even less sense. Because at least with every other brand we usually talk about that's bumping up prices, the gray market's at least pushing it up, where if they're just doing it for nothing, that seems dangerous as a brand.
Yeah, and so I think it's important here. So looking real quick, Joma Shop's one of the bigger gray market dealers, and most of the reversals that they've got, and it's not a lot of them, not counting the pre-owned stuff. The discounts though are about 20 to 30% on many of these.
Okay. So yeah, that's pretty decent.
And yeah, I think the main thing is people use gray market as a bit of a catch-all term, a little inappropriately versus what the term I think historically, and I guess properly would mean. So normally the gray market is 80s, have watches they can't sell, and then they liquidate them basically to gray market dealers who pay well under list, and then they sell them for well under list, but well more than what they paid from the AD to get them. Versus
more. I mean, like not well more, but at least it's like a few $100 here and there. But if you have like 10 of them, that's like $5 grand. So.
Yeah, I've bought multiple watches off of Joma Shop. I think they're great. So
yeah, I've used Joma a few times, and now my Reverso, which is I have I have the large one. I don't know if this is the large or not. I bought it used. Like it was a David SW buy. Back then they were like $40-some was what I paid. But so you see, now they get to advertise the new list of 10,300 and be like, well, we're 7,650. You lose the factory warranty is basically the price you pay.
That's just a marketing ploy, because I mean they already bought the watch if they already have it, and so the cost won't change. It's just the retail impression.
Yes, yeah, it's how much we as a commoner would pay, assuming I couldn't get a discount from the dealer too, because I've heard, I've read people online say they've gone to their authorized dealer and they say, I'll pay you exactly what Joma Shop's site says, and have struck a deal. And they're like, yeah, I mean, if it's a watch they can't move.
Yeah, I'd try it. I mean,
because they'll get more from you at paying Joma Shop price than they'd have probably sold it to the gray themselves. But yeah, and of course they didn't pay as much as what the list is as the AD. So they're still oftentimes making money. It's not usually a loss lead unless it's some total dog of a watch. But it's
so
interesting.
In that sense, it's kind of holding fair, I mean, like.
But yeah, no, reversos, they I mean, they you get them gray, they're pretty low. I mean, like you get anything to me that's double digit percent. Like if you go and look at tutors on Joma, I think many of them are, if it's like black bays, it's under 10%, if I remember. Because I can look, but I'm lazy. You look up Longa on there, it's not much off. But
yeah, I bought my black bay bronze on there, and just because I looked up, it was like $500 cheaper than getting it at the AD, and I'm like, all right, I'll take that gamble.
I got it. Yeah, my 1926 was Joma. That was my first Joma purchase. Actually, was the Tudor 1926, and yeah, it was about $500 off, and I was like, $1,400. I'll try the brand out for that.
Yeah.
I was like, there's at least $30 worth of steel in this watch, so I was good to go. These were back before this pre-pandemic. These were the heady days where watches were cheap. Yeah. All right, well, that's all I had. So I'm going to say, well, thank you two for joining on. I think it was an interesting discussion. And we got a little Eigener passion vibes coming back up. There's a little bit of a rant going. The chat seemed to like it. So guys, check out Watch Time. And
I'm just happy I caught you this time because
no, it's no problem. I'll always just send email invites, Jason. You just keep saying no. Unless you tell me don't email me anymore, leave me alone.
Just keep sending me. It's just that it's crazy nowadays with the scheduling and with all of the. I still have a backlog of watches to review, and there's still more inbound. So it just never ends. It's just like watches almost like round the clock now. So
I had a company send me a strap, and by the time I got around to making the video, the company went out of business. I'm like, oh no.
Oh really? Wow. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, like YouTube watch reviewing is like pretty serious business. Pretty serious work. So.
Yeah, I know. So it's like I want to make it like an apology within the video. Like, well, I mean, I'm going to say it's a nice product, but I don't think you can buy it anymore. So,
so now it's collectible.
Yeah, exactly. So weird stuff. Yeah. But yeah,
that has happened to me like a couple of times already. Like by the time I released the video, people couldn't buy them anymore. Then why did you even really make the video in the first place? I'm like. I'm kind of obligated to do so. So
yep. It gets weird when you have like a contractual arrangement and then circumstances have changed that on the outside make the contract not make any sense. And it's like, is this the same with my occupation? If I have a contract and it's like, we're still executing on everything that was written. I don't really care what's happened otherwise, unless the contract's been canceled. We're going to do what we said we're going to do. So it's just how it is. Just accept the craziness in the world of watches. Just accept it. Well, guys, check out Design Atelier's site on YouTube and Pocket Watch Time with Jason and Patrick respectively. And I'll probably be back next weekend.